you were emotional basically for what, an hour. There's like an hour of that movie where you're just crying, screaming, yelling, amazed. How did you keep kind of the frenzy of it?
It's kind of quite the opposite, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was the most exposing performance space I've ever been in, and to be still like that, it takes a great director to give you a confidence to be so still and so open, and
So I said it wrong, I guess. So what you were being was open, not intent. Is that?
Yeah. Unlike most of the stuff you've seen me do, a script like this, was what I've been searching for a really long time. There's meat to the bone. I'm not playing some goofy best friend or some funny sidekick or something like that. It's a really harrowing journey, and he's a very behind his charm, he's a very jaded young man who has a lot of guilt to bear.
But so talk a little bit again about what is it? I'm just so curious, not being an actor, about that stillness. And I know, looking at Rooney Mara, I see, and I've seen her in many performances where she does that too. It's kind of like, or even I would say, if you've seen that Isabelle Huppert and Elle this season, if you've seen that kind of stillness with everything behind the eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it was it started so I had to audition for this one really hard, actually.
Yeah.
And it's funny when your resume kind of works against you, and you're like, wait a minute, this is you become an obvious choice, and so you have to go in the room and prove yourself. And I put myself on tape when I was in LA, and then
What did you tape a specific scene?
I did three big scenes. There's a kind of argument with Lucy's Rooney's character, and a couple of other scenes, one or two which never made it to the film. And then I went and did a 6-hour audition just before I went to shoot. I was prepping for this film called The Man Who Knew Infinity.
Right, with
and
Jeremy
I've been
Irons.
working on this Indian accent for a long time. And then they call me and say, Garth wants to meet you next week. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I'm online searching and watching all these videos. That's, Saroo does these live talks. And I went in and we spent 6 hours in the room together. And at 5.5 hours, Garth goes, before you go, I want you to roar. And I was like, you must be kidding. And he's like, no, I just want you to scream. I'm going to put some music on. And I want you to expel.
What kind of music goes to the screaming?
This is the thing. So he goes, I want you to expel any sort of pain or anguish you're feeling. And I want you to just completely be free for me to mold you. And he's that kind of director that slowly breaks you down piece for piece and then builds you back together again. And he put on this song, and it's actually a soundtrack from Babel by a composer called Gustavo Santaolalla, or
something like that.
Yeah,
Very close.
something like that. But it's called Deportation. It's a beautiful, stirring kind of strings tune. And I was listening to that on the way to the audition, and it was just this serendipity when he put it on. I was like, oh my God. And we went through this space, and he was kind of talking to me in the moment. Like you can feel your mother, you can see your brother in front of you, and we went through this whole journey together. And as soon as I got the role, he said, look, I want you to come in to a performance space that you've never been before. We don't want to see that kid from Slumdog. We want you to grow up. And so it was 8 months. I called up my manager and said, don't send me anything for the next 8 months. I want to fully commit every fiber of my being to getting this journey right, because I don't get roles like this. It's a fact.
Why don't you talk about that? You don't get roles like this.
Yeah. So anyway, to finish that off, it was
sure.
it was 8 months of the physical training, the accent, and all that. And then I went to India 3 weeks before we started filming, and that was when I started to travel the trains, and I would watch the landscape change, and I basically was doing a pilgrimage as a character, and trying to trace those footsteps. I wrote diaries. I went to the orphanages. And Garth would give me these very strange exercises, like staring in front of a mirror for an hour. And
what does that do? Like, what does that do?
Yeah, you feel like an idiot.
Are you curious what that's like?
It's strange because the first 2 minutes is excruciating because you're used to combing your hair or popping a pimple or doing something, and then all of a sudden you find this stillness and you just look at yourself. And then something crazy happened where I started talking to myself, I started crying, and then I just couldn't recognize the person in that mirror. I saw my father for a second, then my mother, and I went to set visibly shaken the next day. I was like, Garth, what the hell? I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, I don't know who I am. And he's like, that's the point. You know, this is just a shell, but your soul is ever changing. And that's what we're here to do, is capture this soulful performance. So I need you to, and Danny Ball always used to say that to me. I came in from Skins, and as a supporting character, you can display attributes.
Right.
You can do that. You can be loud, but to lead something in a certain way, he goes, I need you to be still so the audience can enter you through your eyes, be on this journey with you. And it's been a long time since I was able to step into that performance space again. Yeah.
So and that is because it's hard to get leading roles. Is that? I mean, you kind of. Or
look,
what?
man,
I mean,
everyone talks about typecast and all that, blah blah blue blue. I mean, everyone faces a stereotype. You can be a beautiful woman and you're going to face a box. I finished Slumdog, and that was the first film I'd ever done, and it was such a beautiful experience. And then I stepped out to an ocean of nothing. There was nothing there. As a young 16, 17-year-old kid, you're like, okay, I want to get my teeth stuck into some more work. I'm ready. I've got a taste of it.
And you had this huge. I remember interviewing you. Like kind of situation like this right after Slumdog, and you were like a puppy, like you had all this energy and you were hugely excited because you were part of this big, this was before the Oscar, you were kind of part of this big thing that was bound to get an award.
Yeah, I mean, it was bigger than any single person.
Individual,
yeah. And from there was nothing to follow it up with, and so there was a choice: do I not work? Or do I try and work and take what's out there so I can keep the tools sharp, so I can learn about the craft? And I chose the latter. And I thought my motto was going to be to sometimes, the only way to break the mold is to take it on, And slowly, as you're in that space, you can inject a difference. And with each role I've done, I've tried to shift the bar a little bit until, a film like this comes out.
Right.
And you get to play a really modern young man. I've not got an Indian accent. The role is split into two. There's a young boy, Sonny Pawar, who's absolutely incredible. And, they...
Did they cast him first? Did they cast you first and then find him? He's a miracle.
Yeah, completely. He is a miracle.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Sajat Ray movie, that first...
Satyajit Ray,
Yeah.
Well, Sonny was picked from 2,000 kids. He'd never been in front of a camera before. He's a perfect namesake. He's a ray of sunshine. And he used to be playing on it. He doesn't really understand the art of acting, and there's a real purity to it. And Garth is this guy that, he puts him in those train stations and shoots from a long lens, and people are actually ignoring this boy. He's screaming for his mother as we see it, and commuters are just brushing past him. And he was great, But sorry, what was the question?
That's fine. I'm curious.
I got lost.
We'll just kind of roll.
Yeah, he would. What's funny?
Did they match you? The question, I believe, was, did they match you? Did they hire him first or you first, or how?
I got hired first, and then I went to India and I saw him doing, play hide and seek with like 30 kids from the streets that they'd found, and it's to find this sort of playfulness and energy, a light. And Sonny really possesses that, and he's actually, to be able to grasp such adult situations, to wrap your head around that. And also, hats off to the two actors he's in the ring with, Priyanka Bose and Abhishek. They actually have been in front of a camera before, and they set the atmosphere so that he can play in it.
So
that's very important to recognize, and Garth would do things with the DOP to leave the camera running. So he'd call cut, and they would keep it recording, and that's when Sonny's like... And he would lie on his brother's shoulder, and that's it. That's the moment right there.
Right, that's so sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll do things like that.